Welcome to the debate. If you look at the world today, it often seems like the wicked are just winning.
Yeah, they had the wealth, the power.
Right, the peace of mind. While people trying to do the right thing are just struggling.
It's a completely destabilizing reality. And honestly, it's exactly the reality the ancient wisdom psalms were written to address.
Exactly. So today, we're looking at how texts like Psalms 1, 36, 37, 49, and 73 actually keep us on track in our daily lives. The central question we're tackling is, does the wisdom of the Psalms primarily guide us by providing a definitive binary moral framework or by offering a nuanced perspective to help us navigate a chaotic, unjust world? I'll be arguing that daily guidance really requires the absolute boundaries found in the doctrine of the two ways.
And I will argue that true wisdom actually lies in the Psalms' honest wrestling with the breakdown of those neat boundaries in real life.
Well, to start, the fundamental requirement for daily tracking is a clear binary. The doctrine of the two ways isn't just, ancient poetry about trees and chaff.
Right.
It's a foundational philosophical framework. Think of it like the base code in a software program.
Okay, base code.
Yeah, it defines exactly what the system accepts, like delighting in God's law, and what it rejects, walking in the counsel of the ungodly. This stark boundary acts as the core logic that keeps your moral system from crashing when it hits the malware of a chaotic world. Without this absolute binary, you just have no baseline for reality.
But does that binary actually survive contact with reality? I mean, a base code is great in a vacuum, sure, but the messy reality of daily life is full of edge cases and, contradictions.
I wouldn't say they're contradictions, necessarily.
Well, superior guidance comes from acknowledging those breakdowns. Take the temple musician Asaph in Psalm 73. He admits to a moment of near failure, saying his steps almost slipped because he envied the prosperity of the wicked. They seem to live completely without trouble.
Yeah, the prosperity of the wicked is a huge theme there.
Exactly. Wisdom isn't just adhering to a simple rule book. It is the difficult, painful perspective shift required when the system actually seems rigged against you.
I hear that, but it's true the terrain is rough. A robust base code doesn't fail just because the environment is hostile, right? The practical command we see in these texts is to fret not over evildoers.
Because the framework holds true over time, the wicked will eventually be cut down like grass. You have to anchor yourself to that ultimate long-term reality rather than the immediate injustice.
But waiting for cosmic justice is psychologically exhausting. I mean, if you're listening to this and you've just watched an unethical colleague get promoted over you,
Fair point.
or seen someone build a massive legacy out of corrupt wealth, the timeline of eventual justice doesn't help you survive Tuesday.
Well,
That's why the real daily utility is psychological. In Psalm 49, we see this profound realization that the ungodly might proudly name lands after themselves, but ultimately, they are like sheep heading for the grave. It's almost a morbid mindfulness, right? Mentally fast-forwarding the oppressor's life to the grave to strip away their intimidating aura in the present. I'd argue that morbid mindfulness is exactly why the absolute boundary is so necessary. It helps us understand the underlying psychology of the wicked, which Psalm 36 describes as a kind of spiritual insanity.
Spiritual insanity?
Yes. By flattering themselves in their own eyes, they construct a false reality where they're untouchable. How does that destroy wisdom? That self-delusion literally cuts them off from logic. You cannot learn or grow if your core assumption is your own flawlessness. When you realize that wickedness is fundamentally irrational, you just don't envy it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Knowing they are irrational doesn't necessarily stop the pain of watching them succeed, though. To actually find peace, Asaph had to physically and mentally step into the sanctuary of God.
Right. The turning point in Psalm 73.
Yes. It wasn't just about reviewing the rules. It was about shifting scale. Entering the sanctuary pulled him out of his immediate earthly timeline and placed him in a divine, eternal context. It stripped away the illusion of the oppressor's permanence by altering his spatial and temporal awareness. The daily value of these texts isn't about maintaining a perfect moral code. It's about this continuous, desperate realignment of our perspective when reality betrays our expectations.
So, we are looking at two distinct ways these texts keep us on track. I emphasize the foundational strength of having clear, absolute moral boundaries. If you don't have that base code, your moral system crashes the moment things get difficult.
And I highlight the mature wisdom of realigning our perspective when our lived reality contradicts those foundational expectations. It's the wrestling itself that creates the wisdom.
We do converge on one vital point, though. Both of our readings agree that these texts demand a total, uncompromising rejection of the world's materialistic values.
Absolutely. Wealth and pride without God are ultimately exposed as empty illusions, regardless of how you arrive at that conclusion.
Very true. As we wrap up, we encourage you to dig into the depth of the Wisdom Psalms for yourself. Consider whether you rely more on absolute moral boundaries to keep your footing, or if it's the perspective-shifting struggles that truly guide your daily walk. There's so much more to explore in this material,